Are all non-probabilistic classifiers margin-based? Let us find out. In the last lecture, we discussed about probabilistic classifiers and non-probabilistic classifiers. When we discussed about probabilistic classifiers, we had seen that in all those classifiers, you will try to find out the probability that it belongs to each class. Let us say probability of y equal to 1 given x. Like this, you will find probability for each class. Then, whichever class is having the highest probability, that is the class to which you will assign this particular example or this particular input. That is how a probabilistic classifier works. Coming to a non-probabilistic classifier, let us say you are having two classes C1 and C2, then maybe you will find out a decision boundary or margin, and then you can say that on one side of the margin it is class 1 and on the other side of margin it is class 2. This is a non-probabilistic classifier. When you see this, automatically you can get this doubt that if it is a non-probabilistic classifier, then is it always a margin-based classifier or other options as well? Can it be non-probabilistic and also not margin-based? Is that also a possibility? This is what we are going to see in this lecture. Probabilistic part I am going to remove off because that we are not considering here. We are already considering that it is a non-probabilistic classifier. Is a margin always required? Just think about it. Is it possible that without actually finding a margin, can you just simply say it belongs to class 1 or class 2? The answer is, it is actually possible. So all non-probabilistic classifiers, they are not margin based. Instead, margin based methods, they are one important subclass of non-probabilistic classifiers. But that does not mean all non-probabilistic ones are margin based. I'll tell you how. So we already know instead of finding the probabilities, we are going to directly produce labels or scores. So when you say margin based, this is the concept used in, let us say, SVMs or in perceptrons. In these cases, you are using margin based. That is, some way you are going to find a margin. In case of perceptron, you will find a margin. In case of SVM also, you will find a margin. Then based on this margin, you will say one side it is class 1, other side it is class 2. But there are other classifiers which are non-probabilistic and you don't even need this margin, but still you can find out which class it belongs to. One good example would be decision trees. So in case of decision trees, you will have a tree-like structure and in each point you have to make decision and finally you have to reach one particular class. So this is a rule-based classifier. You don't have any margin like this. Instead, at each point you will have rules. Based on the rules, you will go through the decision tree and find out which class it belongs. So this rule-based classifier is another subclass of non-probabilistic classifiers which are not margin-based. Then maybe another example we can think about could be a KNN classifier. So K nearest neighbor. In this case, what did we do? In case of KNN classifier, what we did was we found out the nearest neighbors. Let us say if this is the point which you want to classify, you will see K nearest neighbors. Then among those K nearest neighbors, you will find out what class they belongs to, and then accordingly what class would your main point, the input point, belong. So this again is an example where you don't use any margin. You don't use any particular margin like this, but instead using the nearest neighboring point, you will be saying these are the neighboring points and these belongs to this class. According to that, my new point, the input point, should also belong to that class. That is how KNN classifier works. So there can maybe many other classifiers like distance based and all. So these are, I just gave you few examples. That is, it can be rule based, it can be distance based, or it can be based on nearest neighbors. These are certain techniques which are non-probabilistic, but still it is not margin based. So keep in mind, margin based is the major class in non-probabilistic SVMs, perceptrons and all. But there are these methods like decision trees, KNN and all, which are not margin based and still they are non-probabilistic classifiers. So what you have to understand is every single margin based classifier is non-probabilistic for sure. If it is margin based, it is non-probabilistic because it doesn't need to specifically find out P of y given x. So it is not probabilistic because if it is margin based, it is directly deciding based on margin. So it cannot be probabilistic. But the other way around, it is not right. That is, if it is not probabilistic, that doesn't necessarily mean it is margin based. It can be margin based. It can also be these other classifiers as well. So the answer for the question is it is not. All non-probabilistic classifiers are not margin based.